Hi, I'm Honnor, editor of Bowls International magazine, and tonight it's my pleasure to be talking to John and Katherine Rednall for the fifth episode of the Bowls England Extra End podcast. Welcome both, and thank you very much for taking part. It's great to show that bowls is a game that can be enjoyed by family members. John, how did you get involved in bowls?
How did I get involved? Well, I suppose it was inevitable, really, Sian, because my mother and father were both very good players, and indeed my grandparents as well. My mother and father were both county standard players, and I just watched for years and years. In those days, the age limit was 14. You had to be 14 to play Bowls England, and so I was a frustrated sort of 8 or 9-year-old wanting to play and couldn't really.
So did they let you out on the green at that age, or was it quite strict in the clubs that your family played in?
Well, I was very lucky because my mother played a bit of federation in those days, and there was no age restriction there. And they actually played for the Suffolk Iron Foundry, which was Suffolk Lawnmowers social club in those days. My father worked for that company. And so I used to go down and just collect up bowls and have a go on the green, and nobody minded. Whereas in Felixstowe, where I was first playing, the secretary there removed me from the green a few times when I thought he wasn't around.
So how you were 14 when you actually started sort of legally, as it were?
Yeah, I was 14, and I was a weekend member at Felixstowe, where I play my competitions from now. But I was also a member at Rookbury in Stowmarket, which is where I was living at the time. And it was a strong club. It was a good club, and I was lucky enough to win my club singles in just the second year of playing, really. So I had a quite a successful first couple of years. That put me in the champions for the county and won that. So it was a good first few seasons, really, for me.
And hi, Katherine, we'll bring you in.
Hello.
Hello. What memories do you have of your dad playing bowls as you were growing up as a young child?
Right from the word go, really, for me. I think the fondest memories are definitely down at Felixstowe. Obviously with the beach hut surrounding the green, it's quite a unique setting. But myself and I think a lot of the other sort of around dad's age children all grew up together watching parents, grandparents always playing down there. So I think it's brilliant memories. They're ones that you don't really forget, and they do sort of frame the start of your bowls career. But watching dad in the games all the time, especially the team games, I think top clubs, double fours at Felixstowe was always a really special one. It was a great place to sort of be brought up as a child, and also to start bowling myself down there too.
So at what point did you find yourself wanting to have a go?
I think I always wanted to have a go, more so indoors than outdoors. I really started indoors when I was 5 or 6, because Dad ran the junior section at Ipswich Indoor, and there was about 30 juniors used to come on a Saturday morning, and I was just itching to get on the green. Dad eventually let me when I was about 5 or 6, and that was it really. Sort of watched for a bit more outdoors, and then sort of started properly outdoors when I was about 12, 13. But I just couldn't wait. I was hooked sort of as soon as I started watching, really.
Did you used to go around and watch your dad playing internationals and things sort of in different countries as well?
Yeah, I did, especially at Worthing, when there was sort of trials and international series at Worthing. That's always been a really special place for us as a whole family, really. But yeah, great memories there. Great memories going with dad's trials and tests. The one probably I remember most fondly is the one in Australia, when it was the Tri Nations. It was Australia, South Africa, and England. I think that was probably the first big event that I'd really watched, and that was incredible. I've learnt so much from obviously watching that level, right from a young age.
So John, were you desperate to get her on the green?
Well, I think I was just one of those parents who hoped that she would be interested in playing bowls, but as soon as she walked on the green, really, at the age of 5, I didn't really have to teach her a delivery. She just did it instinctively, and I remember the biggest problem that she had in those days when she was 5 or 6 years old was she was actually quite small, physically small, and so it was getting to the sort of 23-meter mark with her bowls to start with. But her timing was so good that even though she was very small and very young, with just a bit of practice, she was reaching full length.
She's still small now, John.
Yeah, there's actually a lovely picture that we have somewhere of a junior, an adult tournament that we played in at Beccles, and that was in 2004, and we actually won that tournament. And I think Katherine was so fatigued by the end of it. We played so many games of bowls that day that we got to the end of the final. She didn't really know whether we'd won or lost.
I don't think the opposition had actually scored an end the whole of that game, but I didn't have a clue.
Tell me about your early years in the game, Katherine. So what happened? You obviously started playing very young. What was your path starting out?
I think the things that really sort of paved the path for me was the junior section at Ipswich. I was always the youngest. I was one of the only girls, and I remember being really scared to sort of play with the boys that were a lot older than me. But I think that was really what paved the way for me. I played the under-25 double rink sort of from the age of 9, 10. And just led for some of the boys that were sort of 15, 16 then. And although at the time it seemed a bit daunting, I think that was probably the best thing that I could have done. I learned so much from them, was involved in competitive games for a really, really young age. So I think that was what got me hooked, really. And I just loved it. I just remember wanting to go and being so eager to go to any competition that we possibly could. It didn't really matter if I won or lost. I just absolutely loved every minute of it.
And can you remember what your first sort of taste of success was, maybe at club or county level?
I think it was mixed pairs with Dad. We've played mixed pairs, be it club, county or national, right since I was very young. So I think probably the ones I remember the most, we always played in the club mixed pairs, and we won that goodness knows how many times. I think Dad carried me on his own pretty much in the first few years, but they're the ones I probably remember winning first, and then going on to sort of be able to compete in the county competitions. And sort of step up from there. But I think it's really the mixed pairs that was the first sort of things that we ever won.
Did you have a lot of support within the club, Katherine? Obviously, like quite a young girl and in teenage years, like how difficult was it for you playing during that time?
I think it was the people that I played with which made it both enjoyable and successful. I mean, I got involved in national setups. I was really lucky to play with sort of the best women at the club. So Margaret Inslee and Carol Barnard, I teamed up with from a young age in national competitions and Lingford Trophy when that was about. So for me, it was just a case of I was quite fortunate to be playing with probably the best setups that I could. So I learned a lot from that, and it was really enjoyable. The team competitions at Ipswich were quite strong as well. So sort of through the teenage years, I just loved bowls. It sounds really cheesy, but I didn't really sort of not care if I won or lost, but I just loved being involved in everything, and just wanted to play as much bowls as I could.
Did you get stick at school?
No, I was quite lucky I didn't. In my year and sort of the surrounding years at school, there was quite a few of us who played. I went to Stowmarket High School, which there was probably about 5 or 6 of us that played either in Stowmarket or in Ipswich. So no, I didn't really. And then when I was doing my A levels, when I won the World Championships at Potters for the first time, and they were absolutely brilliant. I think the whole of the sixth form were actually watching the final on a big whiteboard, which was lovely. I didn't really get any stick for it. Not that I would have really taken much notice of it anyway, but I don't remember really having much stick for it.
Okay. And John, what about you? I mean, obviously you were starting out in the game 20 plus years before Katherine. What were your first memories? What was your first taste of success?
Well, I think my first taste of success really was winning the club singles. And I was only 15, and that put me into the county champions, which I was lucky enough to win. And that in turn got me into the Middleton Cup the next year. So, you know, I think they were the memories. But I had several players who I'd been watching as a boy. Really, I used to watch all the Middleton Cups outdoors and all the sort of national competitions before I was old enough to play. Really, and there were some tremendous players. In fact. Sad news, one of them just died 2 or 3 days ago, Derek Johnson, who played for England. He was probably the best player that I'd seen when I was growing up in Suffolk. And there was a terrific lead called Ron Gage, who, you know, I always knew that I wanted to be a lead. And so I tended to watch leads very carefully. And Ron and Benny Ellis at county level were two that I really admired. And watching Middleton Cup, we used to be drawn most years against Norfolk, and I've actually written about this before, but there was a lead in Norfolk before the John Ottaway era called Jeff Roll, who I just thought was an amazing lead. So I had several club and county sort of heroes that you know, I aspired to emulate and match, really.
And in what way do you feel that the game had changed when Katherine was starting out? How different was her start to your own?
Well, Catherine's start was very different in that it was in the age of junior recruitment, and at Ipswich and District Indoor, we had a link with a local high school, and we had about 23 pupils from that school, which was only half a mile away from the club, who decided that they would come on Saturday mornings. And so they really progressed at the same time. They were great to work with. So in that context, you know, Katherine wasn't playing with older people, you know, that all the time, as some juniors are. She had a junior section to be part of. But you know, Katherine has always been very good with older players anyway. She's always mixed in very well.
And what made you get involved with the junior section at your own club? Why did you feel that was important?
Well, I'm a great lover of recruitment in bowls, full stop, whether it's adults or juniors. But you know, I've always had the view that, perhaps because I'm a school teacher anyway, that children from, you know, 6 years old, 7 years old, have very good coordination at that age. For some reason, they probably find coordinating a delivery action easier than adults do. And so I found myself on teaching practice at Coombs Middle School. I was just 22 years old. And I just said in an assembly one day, would anybody be interested in forming a junior section at Mid Suffolk Indoor Bowling Club, which was the local one at that time. And there were several there, Mark Royal and his brother, two of them. Several people now that are still county players. So, you know, they came to the first junior section I ran at Mid Suffolk. And then I think because of the success of that, and just wanting to see more and more juniors taking up the game and enjoying the game at whatever level, just gave me that impetus really to help with the junior section at Ipswich.
And in your career, John, you went on to play for England. You were selected in 1987. Who was your rink at that time, and what do you remember about that series in particular?
Well, the background to the series, Sian, was that in 1986, playing for the Marlborough Club in Ipswich, we'd won the national double fours, and I was in my usual leading capacity there. And I was really pleasantly surprised the next year, 1987, to get a trial, which was at Nottingham. And Nottingham was a very, very quick green in those days. And, you know, I've always enjoyed quick greens, very fast, swingy greens. So I went to the trial, and, you know, I was under no illusions. I didn't really expect to get in, and played with a certain David Ward. And on the day had a good trial, but really, as I said, didn't expect to get in first go. And absolutely delighted when the team was announced and I was in for my first cap. So the first cap was in Llanelli in Wales, and that's perhaps the most memorable one, I think, for most players. You know, making an international debut, they remember their first match or their first series. They even remember their first bowl, their first end. I know I did. And I was in an amazing rink. I was with Peter McCall from Somerset, who was an ex-professional footballer. A certain legend of the game, David Bryant, at number 3, and David Ward.
No pressure.
Yeah, and David Ward, who I then went on to play more than 50 games with, combined indoors and outdoors. You know, I became David Ward's lead. And so my first series, really, particularly playing with David Bryant, was so memorable. And he was really, really good to me. I remember we were staying at the hotel. There wasn't a team bus in those days, and he drove me personally to Stradey Park. And he probably realised that I was a nervous young 23-year-old, and he said, "Come on, we'll go for a walk around the park." And we talked bowls all the way around this park. And then I remember we approached the bowling club, and a lot of the Welsh internationals were there. And as soon as we started to get near to the clubhouse, they started to talk in Welsh, which they tended to do in those days. And yeah, I remember the first bowls, the first end, and remember it very fondly. And I suppose really my big disappointment from that series was that having kept my place and been named in the 1988 team, that David Bryant wasn't there because, as some listeners might know, he didn't go to Ireland. There was a death threat some years before, and so David played in the 3 of the 4 series as they went round.
So he decided not to play in Ireland.
Yeah, some years before I made my debut, David Bryant had some death threat that if he went to Ireland, you know, he'd be killed, and because of that,
I've never heard that story before.
Yeah, and quite sensibly, he therefore, when the series were in Ireland, he didn't go.
Okay, that's interesting. So who was your skip in '88?
David Ward again. Yeah, I had many years with David, and there were some great skips at the time. You know, the team that I broke into, I remember on the trial ends, the skips walking up to the other end. There was Tony Alcock, there was John Bell, David Cutler. You know, there were absolute legends of the game, and England was a revered side at that time. You know, it was a team that won the series, I think 8 or 9 consecutive years outdoors. So it was a very high quality team, but with personalities in that team such as David Bryant and Tony, John Bell, you know, who really stood out.
Did you play in the indoor team, John?
Yeah, I made my indoor debut in 1989, again in Wales, and I was leading for David Ward. Surprise, surprise. And I played 42 games.
Right. Okay. Do you still play indoors now?
I've cut back a lot indoors. I think probably it's fair to say that the last 8 or 9 years I've just grown to enjoy outdoor bowls more. I just love everything about the outdoor game. I know we talk about the weather, you know, particularly playing at Felixstowe. The green never plays the same 2 days running. You know, the wind changes, the coastal winds can be quite strong down there. And, you know, people talk about the more accurate surface indoors, and yeah, you can't dispute that. I've loved indoors as well. But outdoors, I just think, you know, if you can qualify for the national championships, you really deserve it outdoors because you've played through all types of weather on small greens, rough greens, long grass, short grass. You know, you just deserve it if you get there.
Yeah. And Katherine, you're also in the England team and you've played both junior and senior indoor and out. How old were you when you broke into those setups?
Oh, so I actually got in outdoors before I did indoors. I played in the under-18 series indoors from the age of 13 right up to my final year. And then actually missed the first year of the under-25 series because I was on crutches. So I've been involved in the England setup indoors right since the age of 13, really. But broke into the junior series, junior international team outdoors when I was 16. So I was quite young then. I think I was the youngest in the team. Led for you, Sian.
You did indeed. What about the seniors? You remember?
Seniors indoors. I believe I got in the senior. It's all a bit muddled, really. I've been in indoors and outdoors sort of consecutive years for however many years now. But indoors, I think I got in the senior team the same year as I did the junior team, so I would have been 18. And then outdoors, I believe I got in 2 years after. So
What
it was a bit staggered, really.
like? Sorry. What was it
Pardon?
like? What was it like? How did it feel when you were first going out and playing for England?
Oh, it was amazing. I just remember, I can, to be honest, remember back to the under-18 days, probably more so than any of the other years. It was the series was in Belfast, in Ireland, and it was just the strangest feeling pulling on an England shirt, even sort of at that age, knowing that Dad had done it for however many years, and I watched him every year. It didn't feel daunting, which I kind of thought it did. I've never really been one to suffer from nerves, but I thought it might be a bit overwhelming. Sort of didn't really know what to expect. Sort of looking back on it now, I probably should have been a bit more nervous than I was, but just sort of after I'd watched Dad so many times competing in England shirt, I just felt so privileged to be part of the setup. And then sort of every year since that, I've been involved in both indoors and outdoors. It's always just a privilege to pull on an international shirt. You know that the game's going to be high quality. You know that everyone you play with and against is going to be the cream of the crop, really. So it's definitely something that I look forward to every year.
Now you've got numerous national titles under your belt, including multiple Champion of Champions wins indoors. You're probably most well known for your success at Potters. So tell me a little bit about these achievements.
The Champion of Champions the first time is definitely the most special one for me. People always say, you know, the first one's always the best, and it definitely was. I can remember every single part of the final. I played Ellen in the final, and it was just one of the best quality games I think I've ever been involved in. But it certainly was so special. I just remember I'd finished, couldn't really believe that I'd won. That brings me on to another story, actually, but I just sort of looked over at Dad, and it was just sort of a wave of every emotion you could feel. It was the first thing I'd properly ever really won. Went there with no expectations whatsoever. I'd been to watch Dad a couple of years prior to that at Hailing Island, but just never ever expected to win it. Just went and sort of enjoyed it. Obviously enjoyed it quite a lot to come out and win it. But that was definitely the most special one, and that really is a special place for me. For whatever reason, the green at Hailing Island is one of the quirkiest you'll ever play on. It's heavy, it's sticky, it's no bend in it whatsoever, but which is everything I'd really describe that I would not like about a green. But for some reason, I just sort of feel at home there. So I always enjoy that one.
Hasn't it? How many times have you won now, Champion of Champions?
6.
So it's been good to you.
It has been good to me. Yeah, they did the presentation this year and said that they were going to rename it the Katherine Rednall Retirement Fund, which was quite nice. But it's definitely a special place, that one. But coming on to sort of not knowing I'd won, that's actually quite a funny story about Potters. I played Bex in the final, Bexfield or Wilgress as she is now. And Sandra McLeish marked the final, and she actually had to tell me that I'd won. Because I hadn't really looked at the ends, hadn't looked at the score, and Sandra turned to me and said, "You do realise that was the last end?" So I genuinely had no idea.
How do you prepare for the big games? I mean, obviously playing on TV is a little bit different. You're in close proximity to the crowd at Potters. What's your preparation?
Um, it's a strange one, Potters. It's kind of like nothing you've ever experienced before, and there are so many elements that you do have to get used to. And for me, the most worrying thing about every year that I've been involved there is the walk on. I absolutely hate them. And there's a little step that you have to walk over to actually get onto the green, and I always envisage myself just falling flat on my face. I'm so clumsy. And many people have said, why do you never wave when you walk on the green? It's because I can't walk and wave at the same time. I will fall flat on my face.
For those people that don't know, Potters is the home of the World Indoor Championships, which shown on TV each January. And the players are asked to walk on before their games. And am I right in thinking that you choose your own piece of music?
You do, yeah. They brought that in fairly recently, that you choose your own music. And I think, what was my song?
Yeah.
It was The Killers. Mr. Brightside was the one I chose.
Okay.
I've had that.
Pretty nervous moment, pretty awkward walking on in front of all of those people. Everyone's looking at you.
Oh, it's horrendous. It's terrifying. Absolutely hate it. It's the bowls. The bowls doesn't faze me whatsoever. I have absolutely no problem going there and playing bowls. The crowd doesn't really affect me. I've been quite lucky because it's sort of a local venue for me. I've always had a lot of support in the crowd. But you know, the walk on is absolutely terrifying, knowing that you're on live TV. You can see yourself on the big screen, which I think is the worst part about it. And then there's the step to get up on the green. It could just be a comedy of errors. It really could.
John, what about from your point of view, parents' point of view, seeing your daughter playing bowls on the BBC? That's pretty special, right?
Yeah, I suppose it's every sporting parent's wish, you know. And we tend to sit in the same seats every time up on the back row there. And my philosophy is, you know, I'm watching every bowl, I'm watching every bowl that Katherine bowls and every bowl that her opponent bowls. But yeah, you do worry as a parent because you want your son or your daughter to play, you know, the best game they've ever played, or the crunch bowl at the right time. But there just comes a point, Sian, I think, where you just have to sit back and relax as a parent or as a spectator, and you say, well, there's nothing I can do about this. You know, I can't make the bowls go in the right direction. So just calm down, relax, and what will be will be.
I don't think you've ever been relaxed though, Dad. He's a wanderer. So
Yeah.
if I'm ever in a bit of a sticky situation or struggling or in a really tight game or something, Dad will just wander. You'll never know what corner he's going to be in. You'll never know where he'll be standing, but he won't sit still.
So, Katherine, are you aware of where he is at all times?
Yeah, I think so. You know, Dad's taught me everything, sort of from when I started to play and growing up and the successes I've had. Dad's been there through it with me through every game. And I think subconsciously it's definitely a comfort having him there, because you know I've learned everything off Dad, and we don't really we've never really argued on the green. We don't really have that sort of relationship, but I am aware if I've played maybe the wrong shot in hindsight, or you know, in a bit of a sticky situation or something. It's nice to have Dad there. I don't think it's an odd one to answer really, because I've never really sort of spoken about it, but you know, just having Dad there, he doesn't have to say anything. I wouldn't ever sort of look at him. I don't really even hear him. Even if he was to say anything, I don't think I'd really hear him, but subconsciously I do know he's there, which is really nice.
Are you going to get in trouble if you don't mention your mum and Nan, who are also very avid supporters of yours?
No, I don't think so. I think grandma's in her day, grandma was brilliant. Like grandma won numerous titles herself, and she just now she still does play indoors, but she just enjoys watching now. and that she couldn't be more proud as well. And I know Grandad would have been if he was still around as well. Mum, obviously I've won a couple of nationals with Mum. We've won the triples twice. You know, Mum's still pretty active on the bowls green herself, but yeah, she's one of my biggest supporters. She comes everywhere with me. Has watched probably every bowl as much as Dad has.
And John, how honest are you with Katherine after the games? Like, if she's been rubbish, do you ever tell her, or are you fighting the
No, I don't think I'm ever that brutal, but I think there are times where, you know, she's maybe played a shot that I wouldn't have played, but you know, at the end of the day, Katherine is, you know, she's probably the most successful lady player in terms of singles that there's ever been by the age of 24, and you know, who am I to argue with her shot selection, you know?
So when you're playing together, then John, does Katherine wear the trousers?
Definitely
Well,
not. No.
We play differently indoors and outdoors, because indoors Katherine skips. You know, I mean, she's an indoor ladies skip, and as I said, I don't play as much as I used to. So I lead in any mixed pairs that we play together. Outdoors, we play the other way around. I skip, Katherine leads.
And are you both able to take criticism from each other on the green?
I don't think it really ever happens.
No, it doesn't happen.
No, I think we've played together obviously since I started to play the game. So as I said, I've learned everything off Dad, and Dad knows my strengths and weaknesses to a T, probably better than I do. And I'm never going to argue with Dad's shot selection. You know, he's one of the best readers of a head I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that he's because he's my dad, but if Dad says I can draw within 2 inches of the jack, that 9 times out of 10 I'll have confidence in myself and back myself to do it, just because I trust what he's saying so much.
And it's really lovely that you've both got the opportunity to play together, as we've touched upon. You know, that's one of the good things about bowls, isn't it? That you can play with family members of different ages, and I think it's a real selling point for the game.
It's definitely the thing that bowls is unique at, you know, the fact that a grandparent can play with a grandchild, you know, not just the two generations of mother and father or son and daughter, but, you know, as Ellen Faulkner did, you know, I'm right in saying that she was playing with 3 generations in her triples, and what other sport can offer that opportunity?
Yeah, exactly. John, you've played in 2 major championships yourself. There was the Commonwealth Games in Canada in '94, and then World Bowls in Air in 2004. Tell me a little bit about those 2 events. What were they like?
Well, they were absolutely fantastic. Taking the Commonwealth Games to start with, the Commonwealth Games is just something that I love anyway. You know, from the multi-sport sort of side of things, I love athletics. So to actually be on a jumbo jet flying to Vancouver Island with the whole of the Commonwealth Games team, you know, the long jumpers, the sprinters, the weightlifters, we were all there together. And from my point of view, you know, I'm a runner. I love athletics. I love running. It was great to go out on day trips with Sally Gunnell, Denise Lewis, Linford Christie in that team, Tony Jarrett. Some of the, you know, my heroes of athletics were there as well. So that was great. We played under floodlights in Canada, and the 4 that I played in was with my clubmate Roy Cutts, number 2, Wyn Richards, number 3, and John Bell, skip. And you know, we went very well in the 4s. I think in those days we had I think it was 9 matches that you had to play just in your group, and they were full length matches. And we just had to win the last match to be sure of a medal. And we played against Zimbabwe, and the number 2, Roy, for Zimbabwe, just had the game of his life. And I suppose on paper, you know, we probably were favourites to win that game. But he played so well. And then just 2 years ago, he came to Potters and actually met Katherine and said, "I've played against your dad long ago." And I think I'm right in saying that 4 years later, he won the Commonwealth gold men's singles. So, he was obviously a quality player. But Vancouver Island was fantastic. If you were doing an overseas trip for a major event, it was just a great place to go to. The World Championships were in Ayr in Scotland, and we came away from that with a bronze medal. I played with Mervyn King, Robert Newman, and Andy Thompson. And I remember on the coach trip back to the hotel just how elated Andy Thompson was. He was phoning up his friends and saying, "We got the bronze, we got the bronze," and it's just as if we'd all won a gold. To be honest, we were just thrilled to bits to win a medal. And I think that's I know you were, Sian. When you played with Katherine and Ellen in the Commonwealth Games in Australia. When you go into these big events, you just want to win a medal. And yes, it would be lovely to win gold, but any medal is great from such a auspicious and prestigious kind of event.
I think the bronze medal is a bit different as well. I think obviously gold is, you've won the gold medal, but to win silver, you've actually lost the last game, if you think about it. But with the bronze, you have to fight the last game and win it, so you secure that bronze medal. So I think it's a bit different.
Yeah, certainly is. And, I'm very, very proud of my World Fours bronze medal, as I'm sure Katherine is, and you are of your medals that you've won, Sian. So, they're in a little glass case, and they take pride of place, really.
And Katherine, it does just touched upon your Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast in 2018. How was that for you as your first major tournament, not indoors, so different surface than perhaps you're a specialist on? Tell me all about it.
Oh, it was incredible. Australia for me is the dream place to be playing bowls, and to play my first Commonwealth Games at Broadbeach in Australia was a dream come true. You couldn't have picked somewhere else in the world that I would rather have gone. And I think it especially meant so much as I'd been out there with Dad a couple of times prior to that, and we'd played quite a lot of bowls on Australian greens, and I just loved it. The game over there is something else, and it's just so special to play bowls in the Southern Hemisphere. But the Commonwealths for me were a new experience. They sort of were a mix of every emotion possible, I think. But to come out of that with a bronze medal after such a fight in all disciplines really was just fantastic. To come out with a medal full stop in the first Commonwealth Games for me again was a dream come true. Couldn't have wished for more. The experience for me was just enough. But to come out with a medal after however many continuous days of play was a real achievement.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind saying that when the three of you were on the rostrum there getting the medals, I had a bit of a cry, and it's certainly one of my proudest moments. But there was also another wonderful moment for Katherine when she played in the singles that she might have even forgotten about. But she was fortunate enough to play Joe Edwards in one of the group games, and Joe is known as probably the best outdoor women's player in the world, and Katherine played a great game and beat Joe, and then afterwards was approached by a nice gentleman near the centre. Katherine didn't have a clue who it was, and neither did I. I could see from the stand that she was having this lovely conversation with, somebody that I thought was perhaps a reporter or a journalist, and turned out to be the Prime Minister of Australia, who'd not attended one of his meetings, but loved the fact that an English player had beaten a New Zealander.
Yeah, you had some great games in the singles, and of course you were part of the England team due to be travelling to the Gold Coast next month for World Bowls to play in the singles and the pairs, but obviously due to the coronavirus that's now been postponed until 2021. Understandable obviously, but pretty disappointing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all sort of fairly deflated by the news of the cancellation. Dad just mentioning me playing Jo in the Commonwealth last year was Jo is for me one of the absolute greatest of all time, and to play her and let alone beat her, which I never expected, and I told her that actually in November, and she just laughed in my face. But then had the chance to play alongside her in the recent Ryder Cup was incredible, pretty surreal really. But I think with the obviously disappointing with the World Championships being cancelled, but just got to prepare, I think, haven't we, really, for it being rescheduled next year. You know, at least it's being rescheduled. We can just look forward to it next year instead.
And how will you personally keep up the momentum?
I think obviously when we're allowed back on the greens, it'll be a case of getting as much green time as we can. It'll certainly be strange for myself. I know some people don't sort of play indoors or play outdoors or have a season off, but for me that's never been the case. I've never gone a week, I don't think, without playing a game of bowls. So I think it'll just be get back on the green. Whether it's indoors or outdoors, who knows really, with the current situation, but just get as many competitive games under my belt as I can, I think, and just play as normal and as much preparation, as much game time as possible.
Absolutely. John, this year just gone, you receive your 100th cap playing for England, which is an incredible achievement. What, out of all of them, what series would you say have stood out for you over the years, and who have been your favourite people to play with?
Well, I've genuinely played with people that I've always got on well with. You know, I've been very, very fortunate in all the skips that I've led for. I've had a really good sort of professional bowls relationship with. I've always felt comfortable with them. I played with Kirk Smith for a few years. Kirk is still a personal friend of mine. You know, funnily enough, we first met in the under 25 national singles in 1987. We played each other in I think it was a quarter-final, and we've been friends ever since. And so we had several good years together, and I think there was a series in there where we played against Alex Marshall, with John McGuinness at 3 with us, and Adrian Holden, my club mate at Felixstowe, number 2. And that was a very memorable one. I loved playing with David Ward. You know, he was perhaps a Leeds nightmare, because people that remember David will know that you just didn't have the same length or the same mat position 2 ends running ever. And I remember, you know, his characteristic, in those days you had to have the mat 6 feet on the first end. And I remember, I think in my first series, you know, you're nervous enough, but he came right up to the what is now the 23 meter mark, with the mat back, and said, "Where you like, John?" So there was a pressure on the first end, the jack to his toes, and then if we won the first end, it was full length the next end. If we won that end, it was mat right up to the stick the third end. And like I say, it was a Leeds nightmare in many ways, but we had probably about 60 games together. I loved playing with Mark Walton. I've really enjoyed playing with Rob Paxton in the last few years. So I've been very lucky. I've you know, never struggled to get on with the people that I've played with. It's been a very professional relationship in all the series I've played in, really. And obviously last year being the 100th game was really special.
Who would you say were the toughest players to play against in the men's game?
I think certainly in the home internationals, it's been Scotland, you know, without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm lucky that I've led against 4s that have been skipped by the likes of Willie Wood and Paul Foster, Alex Marshall. And I really do admire the Scots, because they have this fantastic competitive instinct, which is magnified when they play against England, by the way. But they do. They're passionate. I think in terms of playing against other people, there are memorable ones that I've played against. I mean, one of my heroes was Peter Bellis of New Zealand. I played against Peter on the portable rink in the World Singles indoors, and that was in Lancashire. That was Preston Guildhall. I led against Ian Taylor. Some of your listeners might remember Ian, one of the strangest delivery actions ever, where the ball just went round and round and round in his arm and then finally went up the green. Rowan Bradley, some of the really big names. And they, when my England career finishes, and I dread the day it does, but, when it does finish, then I can look back and say, well, I've played a lot of the legends of the sport and played with a lot of the legends of the sport as well.
What about you, Katherine? You've mentioned Jo Edwards. Who else do you look up to in the women's game?
I think it's there's definitely a few. I think Amy Gauchel, for me, has got to be one of the greatest of all time. Amy's consistency. I remember playing her in the 2-bowl singles, one of the first years that I qualified for Leamington, and I held game on the last end, and I'd given Amy, I think, about 2 feet to draw the shot. I can remember it really, really vividly. B green towards the river. And I had no fear at all. It was on the edge of the ditch that Amy would draw the shot, but I felt like I'd actually won. I'd got within 1 shot of Amy Gauchel, which was ridiculous to say that I'd only been playing outdoors for a couple of years. But Natalie Chesney is another one. I think she's just absolutely relentless on the greens this side of sort of local greens around here, especially Leamington. Played Nat a few times at Leamington. She's just been relentless. Just reads the rink really well. Game management wise, I was actually picked to play with Nat this year for the first time in the international series, which has been cancelled. So a bit devastated about that, but I'm sure we'll get to team up next year when it's rescheduled. Other side of the world, obviously you've got to mention Karen Murphy. She's just a legend of the sport, both on and off the green. Had the pleasure of playing in the Australia versus the rest of the world test match, which was Kaz's last test for Australia, which was certainly a special one. Played against her in a couple of the disciplines, but just a great ambassador for the sport as well. Couldn't meet a better person on the green and off the green to push the sport of bowls. So I think that there's definitely a few characters who I've always looked up to in the women's game. I think the men's game, obviously watching Dad through his international career, there's definitely been some standouts. I mean, the likes of Alex Marshall and Paul Foster, watching them in a number of different either series or British Isles or whatever. I don't think you'll ever find a pairing quite the same as Foster and Marshall. But I think there's just a number of different players who I've always looked up to, sort of throughout the years for different reasons, really.
I must ask you, do you have a preference between singles or team games?
It's a bit of a strange question because I've never thought to myself that I've really got a preference. Obviously, majority of my success has been in singles, but I love the team games. Absolutely love them. I think pairs is probably one of my favourite disciplines. Just said about Foster and Marshall, but I think if you can find a pairing that works, well, they'll be very, very difficult to beat. And I do really enjoy pairs because you're sort of entrusting all of your faith on your partner. It's just you and one other. Playing everything together, so I do enjoy that, and obviously I enjoy the international series, both junior and senior, which is 4s. But no, I don't really think I have a preference. I think I do enjoy the singles game, and arguably that's what I'm maybe most natural at. But I do enjoy the team events just as much.
Okay. John, where's Katherine sort of quickly risen through the ranks? She's gone from leading to skipping a rink indoors. You've remained a specialist lead throughout your career. Was that a conscious decision?
Well, in a phrase, Sian, I've never ever started to not enjoy leading. It's what I do best, And at no point have I really ever thought, I would like to play anywhere else for England. I have skipped in Denny Cups and Liberties over the years and so on, but no, I've never had the ambition to move away from that. And I would like it on my gravestone that I was a lead who was meant to lead. In terms of Katherine, I think that the great thing for her was that I think she won her first county indoor title, a two-wood singles, when she was 11 or 12. And it was good from that point of view that she'd won something on her own. It wasn't winning something with me, and people would realise from that day that she'd got the potential to be a very good singles player. But for me, I watched her first indoor series, I think when she led with Wendy King, and at that point I thought, well, you could be a specialist leading in this team for years to come. But then Katherine has got this all-round game, that arguably I haven't had. My sort of drawing is my specialism, and Katherine's got a more versatile repertoire of shots than I've ever had, really. But yeah, so really, I tipped her to be a lead, but she's turned out to be a good all-rounder, really. And going back to the pairs with that you were talking about just a moment ago, I think Katherine and Ellen make a fantastic pairing. And the disappointment of the coronavirus taking account of the World Championships is a big disappointment for me, because I really look forward to going to Australia and watching the two of them play pairs together as they had done for the rest of the world team.
What are your own goals moving forward, John? What would you like to achieve?
Well, it's strange, really, because here I am, the oldest member of the current England outdoor team, and indeed I was the youngest when I got in at 23. And I don't, honestly, I'm just not saying this, I honestly don't feel that that I'm going down, that my game is getting worse or deteriorating. I think last season, the last 2 or 3 months of the season, I don't think I've ever played better. I just got on a really, really sort of purple patch, a great run of form, and probably the best I've ever played in my life. So in that context, I'm still challenging. We lost in 2 quarterfinals at Leamington last year, holding game with 1 wood to go in both. So I still want to win more national titles, and I still want to be playing for England for as long as I possibly can.
And you're also involved quite heavily with your own club, aren't you, in a number of roles? What do you do there?
Well, in the outdoor club, I help with the green. We do our outdoor green with voluntary labour these days, and so I'm cutting and helping with the green a couple of times a week. I help with the big annual tournament that we have. I'm very active indoors with coaching, and I'm probably going to be more active, I think, with coaching indoors next year, because the Ipswich District have asked me really to take on the mantle of a sort of club pro, like you have in golf. There are lots and lots of people who want coaching, and it's a sort of private coaching where they're happy to pay as they would do in golf for golf lessons. They want bowls lessons. So the coaching is something that I've really enjoyed. I've enjoyed working on the level 3 group, having written the chapter on leading. I also am the player manager for the Suffolk Middleton Cup team, which again I really, really enjoyed.
And you're involved with the Bowls England Academy as well, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I'm the coach for Bowls England Junior Academy. I've done that for 2 years now, and the young bowlers that I've worked with there have just been first class. They really have, in terms of their attitude and their professionalism, their ambition, their aspiration. They're an absolute joy to work with.
Why is it so important for you to give something back to the game?
I think quite simply because so many people have given me a lot of help. In my younger days, I was kind of taken under the wing by a great friend called Stanley Bloomfield, and Stan was an England trialist, and I was a complete novice really to indoors, and he took me in, and we played together for a lot of years indoors. And at county level, I've always been treated very well by Suffolk. As I said, I was picked just at the age of, I think I was 17 when I got in the Middleton Cup. Been there ever since. And certainly at club level, outdoors playing for Felixstowe and Suffolk, there is just no other club that I would want to be at. The people there have made me welcome from when I was 14 years old. I grew up there. I was a toddler round there, as Katherine was, round the green with the beach huts. And so, you know, at club and county and national and international level, a lot of people have been very kind to me. You know, the international selectors have shown great loyalty to me. And so, you know, it's just a case of wanting to be involved with the game, and not necessarily to put things back, but just to enjoy as many facets of bowls as I can, really.
Is there anything that you feel that Bowls England can do better to help grow the game, John?
Yeah, I've said for some while that in terms of recruitment, I think from my experience anyway, the best way to recruit bowlers, new bowlers, is to have a junior development officer, if you like, or a team of coaches who go around the schools introducing youngsters to bowls. And you know, from my experience, what happens then is you get the juniors, and then their brothers and sisters might want to come along. Their proud mums and dads come along to watch them play competitions, and you know, several of those parents then say, "Oh, we'd quite like a go at that." And the grandparents come along on the finals days and the big events, and they say, "Well, we'd quite like to go at that." So actually, in terms of recruitment, you know, when you cast your net for young players, you actually have the potential to bring in a lot of adults as well. In terms of marketing, I think Australia have got it right. You know, they're portrayed certainly in their competitive events as being aggressive and competitive, and you know, looking very much like cricketers or baseball players, and looking stern and fierce and so on. And you know, I think maybe we could take a leaf out of that book a little bit more.
Katherine, is there anything that you change about the game?
I think mostly the way it's perceived, to be honest. I think you know, the recruitment of young up and coming players and getting children into the game and involved is just imperative. And I think what annoys me most is that you get so many people that don't have a clue about the sport saying, "Oh, aren't you a bit young to be playing this?" And I get it a few times at work with a few of the clients that I speak to. You know, if you get chatting about bowls, "Oh, aren't you a bit young to be playing that?" And I really do detest that. And I think just getting the image of bowls out there as one that is a sport for all, one that, you know, opens up so many doors for people of all ages, but specifically, you know, the younger generation, and opening the sport up as an attractive sport, you know, like Dad said, the same as Australia have done, and making it trendy, you know, to play bowls, just taking on that image, rather than, you know, probably all the connotations that come with bowls at the moment. It is just so important.
What's so good about bowls for you?
For me, I think, you know, the social side and the achievement side have got to be the things that are so important for me. I've got memories, you know, since a really young age of bowls that bowls have given me, not necessarily just on the bowls green, but off the green as well, and made friends, you know, for a lifetime, and ones that you'll be able to tell, you know, chat about stories, from, you know, 20-30 years ago in years to come. I just think it's so special because it really does pave, you know, your life, um, and the memories and skills and achievements that you've gained from the sport.
I think just going back in
John.
there, you know, what we mustn't lose sight of, and you know, we're three very competitive bowlers, you know, having this conversation, but you know, bowls doesn't have to be competitive. It can be recreational. It can be a sport, you know, which is predominantly for exercise and for meeting up with your friends and so on. And we mustn't lose sight of that. You know, I think as competitive bowlers, we always think that we should push the image of high competition and international competition. And of course, that's what we love. You know, the three of us, that's what we love. But, you know, while we're a sport, we need to cater for the needs of all. And, you know, it's great sometimes just to see veteran bowlers, you know, down on a rink on a Wednesday afternoon, playing for fun and playing for exercise. And so really, you know, I think Bowls England has done a great job over the years with trying to satisfy everybody and to offer opportunities for everybody. So, you know, we don't just need to look at the competitive side.
Obviously, at the moment, we're in quite a strange time. How do you think bowlers are going to bounce back? I mean, it's very difficult for bowlers because a lot of our core group are in the vulnerable categories. So club life could look very different once we get out of this lockdown, for instance. How do you think it's going to go?
I think it'll really be on the up. I think people will just be so excited to get back into a bowls club, onto a bowls green. You know, like Dad mentioned, that bowls is sort of a saviour for them, or is a comfort, and a bowls club is a safe place for them. I think getting the bowls clubs reopened, you know, getting the events going again, so that people have got, you know, social side to look forward to, the competitive side to look forward to, but just getting back into the swing of bowls, you know, catching up with everybody that you haven't been able to catch up with for however many months that this goes on, and just getting the bowls lifestyle back. I think it will really be something that everybody, you know, thrives with.
I think my view there, Sian, is that you know, nobody is going to take anything for granted anymore. And when we come out of this coronavirus, I think everybody will appreciate life more. And I think they will certainly appreciate bowls more, you know, because I have visions of all these frustrated bowlers that have been wanting to play outdoors this season and you know have had to keep their bowls in the cupboard. They're going to be itching to get out there, and I think, you know, people have spoken about street parties and things when this is all over, but I think we might have huge celebrations in bowls clubs that we're back to normal.
I think you can see it over social media as well. You know, the things that have gone round, you know, the chain photos, post the pictures for you know, if you love bowls, post a throwback picture, the Australian challenge of the trick shot challenge. I think it definitely shows everyone is missing it. Everyone wants to keep playing, and just stay as, you know, a united front, sort of through all of this, and just keep everything going, and just look to get back on the greens.
And what would you say to anybody that was thinking about maybe going along to a club for the first time, come whenever we're able to?
I think it'll just be a brilliant time for new members to recruit, or to try the sport. I think everybody will be, like Dad said, appreciating green time, appreciating being at the bowls club, and I think it'll really certainly be a friendly environment for beginners to get involved with.
Great. Thank you both so much for your time. It's been really interesting and it's lovely to speak to you both. Thank you.
Well, it's been great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Sian.
Sian.